This graph shows the 15 best point per game totals from rookies over the past 15 years playing a minimum of 40 games. It also shows the strength of the team they played on with their league finish. So take a player like Artemi Panarin for example. He had a points per game of .96 while playing on the Chicago Blackhawks, who finished 5th place in the entire league. So yes, he did have an amazing rookie season, but maybe the stats were just a little bit inflated by a very strong team. Then you have players like McDavid, RNH, and Besser who thrived on awful teams. Then all the way to the right, you have Connor Bedard, who put up .9 points per game on the second to last place Chicago Blackhawks. Now, this isn't me saying Bedard had the best rookie season in the past 15 years, but I'd probably put him right behind McDavid and Barzal. It's not even a question, the Blackhawks were brutal, and out of these 15 players, Bedard had the worst team surrounding him. They signed Hall in hopes of playing him alongside Bedsy, but he was hurt very early into the season. So a lot like McDavid's rookie year, Bedard played on a line with absolutely nobody. So if he was already that good playing with Nick Foligno and Philipp Kurashev, I'm sure that with the new recruitments, Bedard's gonna go nuclear next season. It's no question, Bedard's gonna improve next year. That's just how natural development goes. It's really just a question on how much he improves. If we take a look at those 6 guys in the same sort of vicinity as Bedard on that graph, and look at their point per game increase in their second year, we can maybe get a good idea of where Bedard's point production could be heading. Almost everyone in that group had a drop-off though, whether it was minimal like Zegras or huge like Barzal. Only 2 players improved on their point production. That was Pettersson and then McDavid, who added .15 points per game to his average. And if we are putting Bedard in that McDavid level of hype, let's look at some other players in that realm. And when looking at players like that, really only Matthews and McDavid come to mind. Matthews' rookie season, he put up .84 points per game. That increased to 1.02 in his second season. McDavid, like I said, saw a .15 points per game increase, putting him at 1.22 in his second season. In this scenario, we're assuming Bedard follows this same sort of progression. He is getting better, stronger, more comfortable in the NHL, and his team's getting better. These are all aspects that helped both McDavid and Matthews improve so drastically. So let's throw Bedard and his .9 points per game into the equation. McDavid saw an improvement of .15 and Matthews saw his points per game increase by .18. So let's just say Bedard follows this progression and improves his point totals by .16 points per game. This would put him at 1.06 points per game, which would be around an 87 point pace if he plays the full 82. And this is completely doable. Looking at his rookie season, he put up 61 points in 68 games, leading all rookies in pretty much every major offensive stat. And like I said, he was on a very, very bad team. Also, another thing that affected him during his rookie season was his jaw injury. Bedard missed 14 games of the season from a hit that got him up high against Devils defenseman Brendan Smith. But the one good thing about this is that he came back even better than he was before the injury. In the 39 games leading up to the injury, Bedsy had 15 goals, 18 assists for 33 points through 39 games. This production was great, especially as a rookie. He was putting up .84 points per game and on a team that was expected to lose pretty much every night. The Hawks went 3-10-1 before he returned to the lineup, and he picked up right where he left off. Well, he did even better. After the injury in his fishbowl, Bedard put up 28 points in 29 games. This time passing the puck a little bit more, putting up more assists, but he was still putting up .97 points per game, which is an 80-point pace over a regular season. The NHL put his over-under at 85 points next year, and I think he smashes that with at least 90 plus. He was pretty much point per game in those last 30 games, so he's going to come back better and better adapted to the NHL, and Chicago did everything they could to make the players around him better. On paper, Chicago's roster looks a lot stronger than it did last season. During free agency, they grabbed top 6 forwards Tyler Bertuzzi and Teuvo Teravainen, along with some solid depth pieces like 3-time Cup champ Pat Maroon and winger Craig Smith. They also brought in Alec Martinez, another 3-time champ who still can play top 4 minutes, and added TJ Brody, a steady shutdown D-man. In net, they picked up a reliable backup in Brossoit, and then just a few days before that, they traded for a middle 6 winger in Ilya Mikheyev. Bertuzzi is pretty much a lock to start the season on Bedard's line. He's exactly the type of player you want next to your franchise guy. a bit of an agitator who's not afraid to get dirty, and definitely has the skills to put up 30 goals and 60 points. Last year was a bit slow for him, putting up 43 points in Toronto, but his last full season before that, he put up 62 in 68 playing top-line minutes. So if Bertuzzi is on that first line with Bedsy, which I'm sure he will, there's no doubt he can get back up to that 60 or 70 point range. Teravainen could also end up on Bedard's line at some point, maybe on the power play, but with the chemistry that Bedard and Kurashev built last season, there's no rush to break them up. It makes more sense to put Teravainen on the second line to help out Hall get back into his form after his ACL injury last season. So the top 6 might look a little something like this. Bedard centering Bert and Kurashev on line 1, and then Athanasiou centering Hall and Teravainen. I could see some point in the season switching Hall and Bertuzzi, but for now I think they'll go with Bertuzzi on line 1 and Hall on the second. Now, this isn't the best top 6 in the league, that's obvious, but I do have a feeling that it can compete with other teams' top 6. The bottom 6 though is where they really take a hit. They'll have Dickinson with Reichel and Mikheyev, then have Ryan Donato with Foligno and Maroon. This isn't great, but it does go to show just how much the team's improved. Last season, Dickinson and Foligno mainly played top 6 minutes, now they're not top 6 forwards. So the roster is moving in a good direction. On defense, the Vlasic-Jones pairing is fine. Out of 34 D pairings that played more than 700 minutes together last season, Vlasic and Jones ranked dead middle, 17th in expected goals against per 60 minutes. So they were a pretty middle-of-the-pack pairing, but when you look at how bad the team was, that pairing held their own. The Hawks also added some veterans in Martinez and Brody, both of whom can still eat up a lot of solid minutes. Martinez averaged over 19 minutes when healthy, and Brody's been logging 21 plus for the last 4 seasons. And then with Connor Murphy, there's likely only one spot left for Korchinski or Wyatt Kaiser, and it's unlikely either will be a 7th defenseman, so one will be going down to Rockford. Korchinski did play a bit with Murphy last season, but they weren't very good together, but time will tell what Chicago does on the back end. So, with a bunch of new guys surrounding Bedard, what exactly are his expectations? Well, like I said, a 35-goal, 90-point season is not out of reach. He'll be playing with top 6 forwards, the power play will be immensely better with a healthy Hall and the new additions, and he's going to come into the season as just a better player. Now, the offense was really never the question about Bedard. Everyone knew he had it, but his defense is a little worrying. I mean, I keep repeating myself, but the Chicago Blackhawks team he was on was very, very bad. So take all these defensive stats that you see with a grain of salt. I know plus minus is a very heavily debated stat. Usually if your favorite player has a good plus minus, you bring it up, but if he has a bad plus minus, it's a bad stat, right? But what it actually factually tells us is how many goals for or goals against he's on the ice for, not accounting for goals against while shorthanded or goals for while on the power play. And Bedard ranked 4th worst in the league at minus 44, right there with his line mate Kurashev. So maybe plus minus is a skewed stat, maybe it doesn't tell the full story. You're right, it doesn't, but something that is pretty telling is out of forward lines that played at least 300 minutes together, the Foligno-Bedard-Kurashev line ranked 3rd worst in expected goals against. So maybe it's his teammates holding him back. Well, out of all players who got top 6 minutes last year, so about 1,000 minutes, Bedard ranks 3rd worst in expected goals against per 60 minutes, which pretty much means that if Bedard's getting 20 minutes a night, he's expected to let up a goal every single game. Now, is this something to worry about? No, it's not. He's 19 years old. I'm sure as time goes on, his defense will improve, just like anyone else's would. And he's going to need his defense to improve to lead by example on the ice if he wants to be captain. There's no question really that Bedard will be the next captain of the Chicago Blackhawks. He's their franchise guy. He'll probably be there for the majority of his career, if not the entirety of it, and he's already had leadership experience. We all know what type of kid Bedard is, right? He's not crazy vocal, but he has been captain of Team Canada, and he was captain of his WHL team, the Regina Pats. So obviously he does have a presence in the locker room, whether it's vocal or not. The Hawks didn't name a captain last season after the departure of Taves, but I'm sure either this or next year they will have a captain, and it will be Connor Bedard. Crosby was named captain at 19 years old. McDavid was named captain at 19 years old. And if he's going to be talked about in the same breath as those guys, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Bedard with the C very soon. I've heard some people say that they want to see Foligno get the captaincy until he retires, then obviously pass it off to Bedard. But I think this is Bedard's team, and with all the new youth coming in, he should be the man and he should be the voice for this team. It's also just a better look to have Bedard as the captain. He's the most marketable player in hockey right now, and to name someone else captain instead would just be a weird decision in my opinion. Captain or not, Bedard is set to break out this season. I guarantee he will post at least a point per game, and who knows, maybe even crack the century mark. Either way, we're about to see a new version of Bedard, hitting his stride with the new revamped Chicago Blackhawks. Connor Bedard is about to go nuclear.